What's it like being a blind parent? How did I prepare? What technology do I use? What resources are available? I'll answer these questions and much more on this blind parenting series to open 2026 here on the Blaise and Access podcast. This is the Blaise and Access podcast, amplifying disability perspective one story at a time. I'm Blaise Bryant. Happy New Year! It's really good to be back with you because I had to take much of 2025 off because I was adjusting to life with a new seeing eye dog along with becoming dad, which I had the great pleasure of doing on August 12th, 2025. Our little boy Colin is about 5 months old, and it is just amazing to see every day. And even as a totally blind person, I can confidently see how he is growing up every day. It's just remarkable. He is already scooting. He is just full of personality. We are incredibly lucky parents, both my wonderful wife, Erin, and, of course, myself. Colin has 3 four-legged older brothers. Flash, who will turn 13 in February, Victor, who will be 4 in May, and my newest dog, Igor, who turned 2 just after Colin did in August. Before I get into the meat of the episode, I want to shout out the audio recording folks, Zoom. Not the same company that we use for most of our meetings and what I use for much of my interviews. These folks have been developing audio recorders for a very long time and microphones and other gadgets. I'm now using a new, fully accessible podcast recorder that my lovely Erin got for me over Christmas. It's called the PodTrack P4 Next. I love how it sounds. It is very easy for me to use. There's a built-in screen reader. I just love this recorder. And I cannot stop talking about it and singing its praises, along with the kudos to Zoom, who has really been taking feedback seriously from blind people to continue improving on accessibility of their products. They have a few accessible recorders out there. It is so much easier to do a podcast now than it ever has been because of technology like this. So if you want to learn more about Zoom, the audio recording folks, go to their website, zoomcorp.com. That's ZOOMCORP.com. Now to why you're here. So what went through my head when I found out I was going to be a blind parent? Well, a little over a year ago, we found out we were going to be parents. My wife, Erin, is sighted, which certainly makes things a lot easier in so many ways. I frankly wouldn't want anyone else on my team and to be living this life with and to have as the mother of my child. I just am so incredibly grateful because the thought, the detail, everything, and you'll hear from Erin in a few weeks when we sit down and talk about our our parenting journey together and the things that she thought of to help me be a more successful blind parent, because there are many, and it's important that you hear from her because, frankly, I'm almost nothing without her. But anyhow, I'll stop being a romantic. I just can't help it. What can I say? When we found out we were going to be parents, there were a couple of things happening. The main one being my second seeing eye dog, Victor, I'd had him for about a year. And unfortunately, it was becoming pretty clear that he wasn't quite cut out for being a seeing eye dog. He was getting anxious at loud noises. Even if we went the direction of the bus stop, he would just freeze because, unfortunately, Victor just didn't like going on our buses, and that is a deal breaker for me because I rely on the buses as my main form of transportation. So, a couple of weeks after we found out, his trainer and my big brother from another mother, Brian, whom I've had the pleasure of having as an instructor at the Seeing Eye, the oldest guide dog school in the world. They were founded in 1929. They're in Morristown, New Jersey, so a little outside of New York City, just to give you an approximation. Brian came, and thankfully, Victor didn't do what dogs tend to do when an instructor is around and audition and treat it as such. I just said to Brian, I need you to see what I'm seeing, which, unfortunately for Victor, was quite clear right away that things just weren't going to work out. Brian, because of the situation, knew about our upcoming baby before our families did, because it was pretty clear that, well, Victor's going to have to retire to the pet life and in due time become a therapy dog, because he will be a great therapy dog. He just has that temperament for it, and he loves everyone and everything. And once we get more settled with Colin and everything, that's our plan. But then it was, okay, we're having a kid. I've got to retire this dog. Very much an emotional tug of war. I was frankly miserable from about mid-January 2025 until, I would say, end of March, when the Seeing Eye called me and said, hey, can you come to the April class? We have a match for you. And that was when I was matched up with Igor, who is eager. He is just an amazing worker. He loves everyone and everything except the vacuum and water. And I'm just so grateful to have a dog that gives me the independence that I need. I'm really looking forward to, in due time, whenever Colin says, Daddy, I can sit up and hold my head up, so we can go on walks in the baby carrier. Because, fun fact, you shouldn't work a dog and have the baby on the front, because in case you run into something, the baby is taking the hit. And when you're using the cane, you just have to do that thing, and I'm sure all of us can relate to it, where if you're around my age, mid-30s or younger, or maybe even a little older, where your parents or grandparent would fling their arm out in front of you when they're slamming on the brakes because they didn't grow up with seatbelts. So it's one of those things you kind of have to do that when you're walking with the cane and you've got Colin. The stroller, I just found that to be too much. You're contorting your body, and it's just not very ideal. I'm not the only blind parent who has felt that, who travels with a seeing eye dog or guide dog. So, anyhow, so there was that emotional tug of war that was going through my head of, okay, well, how are we going to do this? And there was just a couple other life things that are just not worth getting into. And because you just, before getting matched with Igor, you just felt so bad for Victor. The poor dog was just so defeated. We tried everything, and Victor tried really hard. It just didn't work. But as life has a way of making things happen, and that adage of time waits for no one, well, that was also a reality I knew because I've never really had a lot of experience with kids, that I needed to get some sort of adaptive parenting training or like how to work with kids, changing them, bathing, medicines, all that stuff. So I reached out to a friend of mine who works in the field, and Samantha suggested that I get in touch with the Commission for the Blind here in New York State. Every state has a different agency for their vocational rehabilitation. That's a fancy word of saying employment, jobs, or higher education. They have what are called vision rehabilitation therapists, VRTs, that teach independent living skills training, and one of the sets there is adaptive parenting. So I got in touch with the Commission for the Blind, and I asked to work with this lady, Maureen, who I've had the absolute pleasure of knowing for about 20 years. And they said, yeah, not a problem. They got everything in place. They had to reopen my case. It took about 10 days, which things usually take a bit longer than that. I'm very fortunate that they understood the urgency and they just did what they needed to do. Very, very lucky. Shortly before I went to seeing eye, Maureen came over and we sort of laid out the plan of, all right, well, we're going to work on diaper changes and bathing and holding a baby. And we used these dolls. I practiced on dolls, which in a lot of ways, the dolls made it more difficult than the baby itself, I came to realize. But hey, it's all good. I also, as an extension of working with Maureen, I did a little orientation and mobility instruction with another person I've had the great pleasure of knowing for a long time, Steve. Steve showed me the route to my first job right after I got back from the seeing eye the first time with Flash, pretty much fresh out of college. So that was about a little over 11 years ago. And I've just sort of stayed in touch with Steve ever since. And what Steve showed me was, techniques for carrying Colin when Colin eventually came. But before that, carrying the doll / Colin with the car seat, walking with it, bringing it out to the car, those sort of things that might seem very basic and common sense, but it was all new to me. And I'm just so grateful to have had those services in place so I didn't have to learn all of this stuff on the fly. Not saying I couldn't have or wouldn't have. Of course I would have. I would have figured it out somehow, some way. But my goodness, it certainly made things a lot easier having that foundational knowledge. Just, I can't say enough about the importance of whatever it is that you're going through. If you can, try and get services proactively. Now, another thing that we did, not so much for blind parenting, but just parenting in general. See, being in the human services field, I have really cool connections to people. And one of the people I have connections with is with a dear friend of mine, Jenna, who runs the New York Achieving a Better Life Experience, otherwise known as ABLE program. It's ABLE accounts help you protect money. So like if you get Social Security, if you have an ABLE account, you can put money in there and the resource limits don't count against you. It's really a great program. Jenna runs that. She also is a certified car seat technician on the side. Jenna came over and showed us all the different things with the car seat and installing it and those sort of things. And I bring this up because, yeah, you can go to your local police station and some of them may know how to do it, but the reality is most police officers haven't gone through, there's a training, I think it's about a 40-hour training that you have to go through in order to become a certified car seat technician, and most officers just don't. So check in your area for car seat technicians if you are a parent that is expecting. And if you are, hey, congratulations. Parenting is both extremely rewarding, fun, and it is something that teaches you a lot about adaptability because, yes, it is challenging. But I frankly wouldn't want it any other way. Being dad is honestly the best thing that has ever happened to me. By far. That's essentially what was going through my head and what I did to be prepared. Next week, I'm going to show off some of the gadgets that help me with my blind parenting, whether it is a food scale for formula, bottle warmer, thermometer, labeler. I've got some stuff to show off, and I look forward to sharing all that with you next week here on the Blaise and Access podcast. The Blaise and Access podcast is a Blaise and Shows production. The show is both hosted and produced by me, Blaise Bryant. Two of my dear friends, Lisa, Karen, Zach, and Mike did, along with Erica, and support the show if you can at blaisindshows.com. That's BLAISIN shows.com. If you ever want to be on the show, click on the contact form and fill it out. I get those submissions and would love to figure out a way for you to be on the show because we've got a whole new format. We're doing series instead of just individualized episodes because I think that's just going to make the show a lot better and really dig deeper into issues. Again, that's blaisindshows.com, BLAISIN shows.com. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and I would love to hear from you on Facebook at Blaise and Shows or through the contact form on my website. I'll be back with gadgets next week here on the Blaise and Access podcast, amplifying disability perspective one story at a time. Have a great day.